Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar featuring goVirtualOffice. We have two ERP implementation experts with us today for the topic Mastering ERP Implementation, Insider Do's and Don'ts for Seamless ERP Success. My name is Liz Brigson, and I'm happy to be here as your host today for this important topic. And there's a few things I'd like to highlight to help you get the most out of the program. If you've joined us before, you do know we enjoy making our webinars interactive and fielding your questions and hearing your feedback. So we can go ahead and get the dialogue going by using the GoToWebinar questions box, and go ahead and say hi. Let us know where you're joining from. I'll keep my eye out there. Let us know if maybe you've recently implemented an ERP, maybe you're considering implementing an ERP. We'd love to hear that too, just to find out more about your interest in the program today. So hello to Jovin joining us from Toronto. Great to have you here. Andrea is joining us from New York City. Welcome, Andrea. Wonderful. Hi, Leah. Dallas-Fort Worth with an ERP implementation in progress. Very good. I'm sure you'll learn some things today that will help the continuation of that project. Renata from New Jersey. Great to have you all here. Well, I'm going to keep my eye back onto the slide materials so we can make sure we can keep rolling. You can access the presentation slides from the GoToWebinar control panel. There's a little handouts button for materials. That's where you can find the program materials, the PDF of today's presentation. Today's webinar is 1 hour, so you'll want to make sure that you stay with us for at least 50 minutes and respond to at least 3 polling questions. Today's webinar features 6 polling questions, so we'll have some good checkpoints. They'll keep things moving quickly. Please respond to those polling questions to earn CPE credit, and you'll be able to access your CPE certificate directly from your Incorsa dashboard. It's great to be with you today. And of course, today's webinar, as I mentioned, is 1 hour. So to really get the most out of the program, I would highly recommend following goVirtualOffice on LinkedIn and connecting with our presenters today. Today's webinar is brought to you by goVirtualOffice. goVirtualOffice is an award-winning NetSuite provider helping companies enhance productivity, improve efficiency, and grow profits by unifying, simplifying, and automating business processes. Our presenters today are Andy Zinkel and Sean Brown. Andy is a managing partner and director of ERP Solutions, and Sean is an ERP implementation manager. So Andy and Sean, thank you so much for joining us today. Really excited to hear from you. And Andy, I'll go ahead and turn things over to you.
All right, great. Thanks, Liz. So just to expand a little bit on Liz's introductions, my name is Andy Zinkel. I am the Director of ERP Solutions at goVirtualOffice. I've been at GVO for a little over 9 years now. Spent the majority of my time doing new implementations, particularly of NetSuite. Over the last couple of years, we've added Acumatica as well. So we're now going down the Acumatica route. So we have some experience in multiple platforms. So yeah, it's great to meet everyone, and I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, so I'll do a brief introduction for myself. So my name is Sean Brown. Again, to reiterate, welcome everyone. I have actually been with GVO for a few years now, leading implementations, kind of walking clients through start to finish, getting up and running in the new implementation or the new ERP. Prior to my tenure with GVO, I actually a controller in the manufacturing environment, and prior to that, in the CPA world. So I have a heavy background in finance, but ever since have loved going through and doing implementations for all the clients that we help.
So today we're gonna touch on a few different things that we encounter, we've experienced in implementations. We're going to talk about how to best align your team, how to manage the scope and the budget of your implementation, an overall implementation strategy, and how things like data and testing fit into that. And then along the way, we'll touch on some common pitfalls that we've seen across our experience implementing. Not every implementation goes smoothly, so we've certainly seen some projects stumble a little bit, and so we'll call some of those things out, and hopefully you can avoid some of those same pitfalls. And then we'll end today with some of our best practices that maybe weren't already naturally mentioned as part of the webinar. With that, Liz, let's get started with our first poll question.
That sounds good. Thank you both very much. Here's our first polling question. Which of the following best represents how your organization conducts business? So, are you operating in the manufacturing sector, wholesale distribution, retail, business services, or other? If you respond to other, feel free to let us know in the questions box. I also want to say hello to Michael, who's joining us from Long Island, New York. Michael is currently evaluating whether to replace their organization's ERP. So certainly very timely. Christine wrote in, mentioned other coming to us in the hospitality sector. Andrea wrote in higher education. Lisa is other. David software. Alex tech industry. We have another Lisa working for a residential home builder. Greg is in real estate. So really cool to hear about the other industries and sectors that are represented. And really cool, Andy and Sean, to hear about your backgrounds as well. What industries do you gentlemen spend most of your time working in?
Yeah, so GVO has been in business for 20 years. In that 20 years, we've been very horizontal. So we've worked with clients in a number of different areas. I would say the most has been wholesale distribution and manufacturing. Though we have seen some more professional services and things like that as well.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Also want to say hi to Terry, who's in the non-for-profit industry, Julie with utilities. So I'll go ahead and close that poll and share the results here so we can see the representation. So thanks all. Really great to hear from you. And we're back to the slide deck.
All right. Thanks, Liz. So as we look at our implementation experience, Sean and I kind of boiled this down to kind of 5 key areas of success. First, assembling and getting your internal and external teams aligned and organized, and then certainly figuring out what should the scope of the project be, and along with that, what is the budget. Data is so often appreciated, underemphasized, and then testing as well. I think we're going to dive into each of these in more detail. Before I move forward, though, Sean, any additional high-level comments on these?
No, I think this hits it on the head. A lot of these are major players in the game when it comes to an implementation, and some of them are undervalued. I know you called out the data strategy and testing. A lot of times where we see some of those areas that make the implementation a little rocky is normally right there. So we'll go through all of this though as we go through the presentation.
Yeah. So with that, let's start with a common pitfall, and that goes with aligning your teams. So a common pitfall is not aligning your internal and external teams. Change is hard. And an ERP implementation is a big change. You're gonna move some people's cheese. You're going to disrupt their normal cadence, their normal workflow. In the end, the goal is to make it better, but along the way, change is going to be a difficult thing for a lot of people. And you'll only make it more difficult if you're working inside of a bubble. You need to engage your team. You need to involve appropriate parties within your organization. You need to really start on the front end and have those conversations even before you go out and start searching for what's the technology that you want to use and who do you want to do that implementation. You need to make sure that your team is collectively organized and aligned on what your initiatives need to be, what the priorities are, what you want the new ERP to do for you.
Yeah, and there's a lot of value in doing this because for starters, it starts getting that user buy-in process kind of started, right? And then it helps you identify what you're looking for in that ERP, right? When you have all your different areas kind of involved in this process, you can identify maybe those things that you don't think about at the high level. You can start finding those people that are on the front lines that may have an understanding of certain processes that might get overlooked on a day-to-day basis that align with, hey, we need a system that does X, right? And that kind of starts here and then builds upon it from this point.
Yeah, and I think too, it helps generate some excitement as well.
Yep.
An ERP implementation, while it is painful in some ways, it's an exciting thing. It's a big positive change for your organization and an investment in the future. So, you do want to generate some excitement around that. So with that, you want to make sure that you get the right people involved. And it starts with a project owner. And having that right person that can really take ownership, take the implementation project kind of by the horns and really own it, really from the front end all the way through the implementation and even beyond go live. You want somebody that can really own it, somebody that has authority to make decisions within the implementation, and then somebody that can follow through on things along the way. I know, Sean, we've found over the last couple of years especially that having a true owner of the project on the client side has been a real true measure of success. What have you seen as attributes to that project owner?
Yeah, so the project owner typically has a good sense of understanding across the board. Maybe not all the nitty-gritty details, and that's where they reach out to some of those individuals, but they're the focal point of the implementation for your team, right? They're the one that everyone goes to, kind of funnels everything to that individual. They're good at communication. They're good at understanding the requirements and aligning to those requirements, and then taking things in as they come and being able to delegate it out to get the answers that maybe your implementation partner is looking for in regards to data or configuration, to be able to streamline it and make efficient use of that time and that communication across the board.
Yeah. So then along with a project owner, the other area that we need that we see that you need to have is subject matter experts. We refer to them as SMEs. You need those people that really understand the nitty-gritty of how things work in the organization, can really own different process areas within the organization and help define what those requirements are, what the system needs to do for those requirement areas or for those process areas, and then can help on the back end with some of that testing to make sure that the system is doing and ready to go for go live. The other thing to keep in mind with these SMEs, the project is going to take some of their time. It's going to take them away from their day-to-day business. These people are already busy people. They're probably at some kind of a management level, maybe even just a mid-management level, but they're busy. They're busy people. They're not sitting on their hands waiting for work. They're already busy. So you've got to understand how you're going to free them up so that they can meet those deliverables as part of the project, keep the project on task, and take on any of those responsibilities within the project that are needed. Sean, any other thoughts on SMEs?
Yeah, so one of the biggest calls, depending on how large your organization is, I know you called it, and typically what we see with a SME is that they're normally at the manager or somewhere in that vicinity level. Doesn't always need to be the case, though. There are some instances where that SME may be someone on the front lines that just has a very, very thorough knowledge of your industry and that job responsibility. We've seen kind of areas where the managers are the ones that take the reins and they understand all of it, but then we see the people that are on the front lines that may have a better understanding because they're in it every day. So kind of crosses both kind of worlds there, but identifying early is definitely a key element of success in an implementation.
Yeah, and I would say too, you've got to make sure you keep everybody aware of the project, even though not everybody will be playing a significant role. Keep everybody informed on the team of what's going on. Having regular cadence conversations, with the core team, and then with the organization at large. Whether that be through a bulletin board or electronic communication, whatever the case may be. And the other thing I would say is with project team is keep the size of the team at a manageable level. When we talk about SMEs, we typically think about 1, maybe 2 per process area. You don't want your project team to be so large that everybody's in each other's way, and you spend a whole bunch of time talking about what needs to be done and not actually executing. So then, in addition to the internal team, you obviously need to have an external team as well. I, first of all, would highly recommend not trying to do the implementation all on your own. You're going to need some kind of outside help. And in some cases, you might need outside help from a couple of different angles. But you want to choose a partner that is going to set you up best for success. You want to choose a partner that aligns with your culture, understands what you're trying to accomplish. They are equally as important as the actual technology that you choose. You want to get it right the first time. You do not want to go through a second round of doing an implementation of the same solution. And we see it a lot, by the way. We've encountered several clients over the years that have started doing an implementation. It didn't go well. They didn't pick the right external team, so they came to us, and we kind of picked up the pieces and got them over the finish line. It's painful to do that way. So do some work on the front end. Make sure you develop a good relationship with whoever you want to do that implementation. For some people, it may be that your organization best fits with a large implementation company or large ERP solution provider, maybe even the software publisher. For other companies, we see that a smaller, more intimate partner is a better fit, so that they can come alongside and really get to know your business and understand what you're trying to accomplish on a more intimate level.
Yeah, and I think you nailed it on the head, Andy. I think finding that partner and that right partner that fits your guys' organization is going to be fundamental. Where we've seen some of those challenges is they're looking at it more of a transactional component, right? We're going in and you're looking at it, hey, this is just another one churn and burn kind of deal. That's not normally the best solution. It might be the one for you, but where we've seen success is that partnering element where you guys go in, there's a common goal and a common accomplishment that you guys are looking towards, and that's where we see success.
Yeah, that's a great point, Sean, on the not looking at it as transactional. If you're looking at it as transactional, it's more common that you're going to have a challenging implementation. You really want a partner that's going to come alongside you for the long haul. While an ERP implementation may only take 6 months, you really should have a relationship with that partner for potentially several years. You're going to implement the software to begin with, but then over the course of time, you're going to want to make enhancements to it. You're going to need support, and so on. So you definitely want somebody that can come alongside you and be a part of your company, really an extension of your company. The other thing I'll call out, I mentioned that you may want to partner with a couple of different partners for a couple of different reasons. Certainly, you'll have a partner for your implementation, for your ERP itself, but we've also seen some companies that will hire an outside project management firm or an outside accounting firm or something like that to come alongside and help guide and manage things more on the client side and be kind of that liaison between the company and the ERP solution provider. So keep that in mind as well. And it also comes into play with different multiple systems being implemented. Maybe you have a website, maybe you're using a third-party WMS solution or something like that. All of those partners need to be able to work together. All right, Liz, poll question number 2.
All right, sounds good. Great list right there. So let's go ahead and launch our second polling question. How many systems are you currently using to operate your business? So go ahead and let us know if you're running on 1 to 3, 4 to 6, 7 or more. That sounds like a lot of logins if someone was working with 7 discrete systems, but I'm guessing it probably is possible. It probably can happen. Do you see that, Sean?
Yeah, we see companies come in and we consolidate it down. Seven plus gets up there. Typically where we see it is in that probably 3 to say the more 4 to 6 range maybe, but we've definitely seen companies leverage multiple systems.
Yes, and I know that you work with several systems. One of the things that NetSuite always talks about is how having a single source of information can really help businesses have more
Yeah.
visibility to drive their vision and make better decisions. So it seems like it's a good direction to move, but we have a mix. The folks with us today, I'm going to share those results. Thanks everyone for getting your results in there.
All right, thanks, Liz. So the next pitfall that we see in this area of our presentation today is probably the meatiest and the most important, and that is defining your software needs. If you don't define really what you need the system to do, it's very, very difficult to actually implement a system that's going to be successful for you. You need to understand what the system needs to do for all areas of your business. Those needs might be different for different areas of your business, so keep that in mind as well. And you really do need to have those internal conversations. I think I mentioned it before, but do this before you're starting to talk to those outside providers. To a certain degree, you're going to be tempted to go and feel things out, see what different softwares can do, and so on. I would just caution you that if you do that, sometimes your list of what you want to accomplish may become larger than what you could or should actually implement. So at the core, figure out what is really needed first, and then go outside and start looking at other solutions or what solutions are out there.
Yeah, that's a really good call out, Andy. Typically, where we see a lot of those challenges is uncertainty around what is needed, right? What are you guys looking for? What kind of software do you guys need to be able to consolidate all those systems down or do something in that nature? That's where things can kind of get blown out of proportion at that point.
Yeah, keep in mind that an ERP is great as a central one source of truth, but there may be other softwares that need to connect into that ERP. And so figure out what software needs to do what. In some cases, your ERP will do most everything. In other situations, you might need to have or choose to have, depending on your business needs, a separate WMS or a separate solution for payroll. Certainly a website may need to be connected into it. So understand what software is going to do what or needs to do what as you go into defining what the scope of the ERP implementation needs to be. And then when you are scoping it out, pay close attention to the statement of work that your solution provider or your partner is proposing. If you're seeking out bids or RFPs from various different providers, they're not all going to be the same. They're not going to be equal. Some are going to put more emphasis into data than others. Others might put more time into training. Others will put more time into support. It's not just about what's being configured. The entire implementation is an entire package of activities, including data, training, support, configuration, development, integration, and so on. I don't know, Sean, if anything comes to mind of clients or experiences that you've had that we've encountered varying different statements of work.
Yeah, I see it all over the board. It really is contingent on what you guys are looking for and where you guys think maybe that emphasis needs to be. I can tell you that 99% of the implementations that we do, data is a subsection and it's normally pretty heavy. And the reason for it is because it's very, very important. And it's foundational for your implementation to make sure that the data going in is good data, right? Same thing with walkthroughs. So depending on how you guys are structured and how we kind of go through those requirements, your solution provider might say, hey, we need to do some walkthroughs and training, and that might be having an area. But we've seen it stripped down to just configuration, and those typically are very cut and dry. They are kind of that churn and burn kind of mentality, but where you get the data being a little bit more and the walkthroughs being a little bit more and that support being a little bit more is where we typically see success.
Yeah. And I can't emphasize this slide enough. We at GVO, our philosophy has always been crawl, walk, run. It, without a doubt, leads to the highest success of implementations. Your implementation should probably take no more than 6 months. If you're working with a partner and they're saying it's going to take you 18 months, very good chance the scope of your implementation is too large. Now, I say that because our experience is mostly with mid-market type companies. If you are a large Fortune 500 enterprise type of company, certainly a different animal. But if you're a typical mid-market type sized company, 3 to 6 months is our most common. If you're going beyond 6 months, it's probably too large, and that's where you're going to start to see challenges with user adoption. You're going to lose interest in the momentum of the project, and things are going to kind of slow. And you're opening the door for things to go poorly. So don't bite off more than you can chew.
Yeah.
Focus on putting into the scope of the project what you really need to be operational on day one. The nice to haves can be put into a phase 2 or a phase 3, can be chipped away at over time. But what are those things that you need to absolutely have in place on day one? Focus there first.
Yeah, and to elaborate on that, what we see success in is people understanding that this ERP is an investment for you guys, right? You guys are looking at this as an investment that you guys will continue to grow on as time kind of keeps going, right? I can't emphasize how many times I've used crawl, walk, run in implementations, because the people that do follow that mentality, they can start fundamental, get your operations going, and then build on it as you go and really maximize the value instead of trying to put everything into one. See some frustration on the end user side, see some frustration across the board. It just alleviates all that with the understanding that this is an investment that you guys are going into, and it's there to grow with you as you guys continue to grow.
Yeah, and you're not going to understand all that your ERP can even do until you get in and start using it, right? So one thing that we tell our clients a lot of times, nearly every implementation, don't mess with the out-of-the-box dashboards out of the gate. A lot of times we'll have clients come in and say, well, I got to have this report. I've got to have it look just this way. I've got to have this thing on my dashboard. And then they start using the system and they're like, oh, wait, there's this natural report that does this for me. I don't need that custom report. So start with as close to out of the box as you can. Certainly some customizations are going to be needed. That comes with any ERP implementation. But keep it as simple as you can, and don't boil the ocean if you don't have to. Along the way, particularly as you get into walkthroughs and some of the training elements, you're going to hear, wouldn't it be cool if it also did this? Yeah, it would. Yeah, it certainly would be. But do you need it right now, or can we do that a couple months down the road? And it's actually a good thing, by the way, that you're hearing these, because now there's excitement about the ERP, right? Because you're going to start seeing people's minds turn a little bit as they get into some of those walkthroughs and training, and see what's possible in an ERP, as opposed to maybe you were just working with QuickBooks and Excel documents and such in the past. A robust ERP can do a lot, but you've got to take it in chunks. So it goes back to that practice or that project owner again. They need to be able to know whether there's ROI in bringing it into the implementation initial phase, or whether it makes more sense to hold off for the future.
Yeah, and we hear this sentence in every single implementation, and normally that is the indicator when we get into things that the excitement is building. And it's normally a pretty good metrics for us on the implementation side, that your implementation partner, to identify, yeah, okay, when we get to go live now, there's going to be a lot of excitement. It's already building.
Yeah. Right alongside the scope is the timeline. The more scope you add, the longer the timeline likely is going to need to be. So you need to figure out what the timeline needs to be. In some cases, you're thinking about your ebbs and flows of your business. For example, if you're a heavy e-commerce company, you probably want to stay away from Q4 and make sure things are working before you get to all those Black Friday deals, right? So think about your business, time out the implementation accordingly. You want to handle the bulk of the implementation and get things live when things are a little bit on the slower side as opposed to your peak season. That way things are solidified. The dust is settled a little bit from the implementation before you hit that peak season. Sean, I'll let you talk a little bit more on timelines.
Yeah, so timeline is a very important element of the implementation. It gives a clear understanding for both the project manager on your guys' side, along with your implementation partner to align on everything and normally have a touch base on a regular cadence to say, hey, are we still on track for everything? And if we need to, you guys can identify it well in advance instead of getting to a point where you're at go live and going, wait a minute, we have none of these things done. We need to go back and revisit it and cause a little bit of chaos and confusion, right? Having a clear definition of what that timeline is going to be very important. And as Andy called out, timing it around holidays, around vacations, around busy season, around those big things is very crucial in the success of an implementation.
Yeah, and that last statement on the slide too is important. As you start an implementation, there should be a project plan out there. Everybody should know what those milestone dates are, what the deadlines are. We always give our clients homework at the front end. Maybe we need examples of transactions or forms that they use, examples of reports, examples of data that we can load in as sample data. All of those things need to be kept to the timeline that is initially set out, or you risk not meeting your go live date. And nobody wants to push your go live date. The implementation partner included, nobody wants to push it. So if everybody's doing their part, and like Sean said, if you're having those weekly meetings and having those conversations around what's outstanding, what needs to be done, that can really, really help us with the success of the project. Liz, we're ready for number 3.
Very good. Let's go ahead and launch the third polling question. And here the question is, does your team have access to real-time data reporting currently? So this is the third polling question, and thanks everyone for getting your results in. I'm tracking some takeaways, gentlemen, and there's a lot here that I'm writing down, but something that really caught my attention is where you talk about the scope of work. That phrase, wouldn't it be so cool if it also did X, Y, Z? I've been part of an ERP implementation, and I probably said that very phrase myself because it's there is excitement around the implementation. But remembering that, yes, it impacts the budget, it impacts the timeline, and that there really should be an ROI evaluation for a change just like at the outset. That's really, really good advice there. And also just to keep that timeline, manageable so that we don't have this forever project that's dragging out and burning people out. Some really good takeaways there.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on that real quick, Liz, because you triggered a thought for me. Figure out a way to keep track of those nice to haves also, because you may not pull them into the implementation project, but you don't want to lose sight of them. So, we try and develop a mechanism where we can keep a list for the client so that after go live, we can kind of present that list to them and say, okay, here's things that we heard through the implementation, but they weren't done. So you may want to have those on your radar for the future.
Yeah, that's a great idea, Andy. And then probably same thing for the reports too, because that was a neat tip. Rather than diving in and creating all those custom reports at the beginning, try using what is available first. And then it's probably a lot easier to customize something you're familiar with but that sounds like another list, like the list to maintain.
Yeah.
Great. Well, we went ahead and closed the polling question. Thanks, everyone. And it looks like we have almost half of our audience today does have access to real-time data and reporting. That's fabulous. Some of you do not, and you're not alone. You're certainly not alone. Sometimes kind of sounds a little bit like a no if we're not sure, but this is the direction we're working toward, but it's definitely something that a lot of companies are still aiming toward as an objective.
All right, so let's transition into more budget type conversation. And the common pitfall is clients falling for what we refer to as FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. As you're negotiating and evaluating different ERP solutions on the front end, sales tactics can vary by partner, by software publisher, and they can apply pressure at times. You don't have to fall for that pressure. Sometimes what they're telling you is true in terms of if you sign by such and such date, you're going to get the best discount and so on. Sometimes it's not the case. So don't fall for it. Chances are you'll still be able to get a pretty decent discount, even if you don't meet a certain date or requirement that they're issuing or what have you. It is okay to take your time. You do want to get it right. You do want to pick the best solution for your business. You want to pick the best partner to work with. So you don't have to rush through this. Obviously, you don't want things to drag on too long, but you don't have to fall for that fear, uncertainty, and doubt.
Yeah, and typically what we see when that happens, where maybe you succumb to that because you're unaware of it, you're not familiar with it, this ERP selection process and finding a partner doesn't happen very often, or shouldn't rather. Typically we see them come back through as re-implementations down the road.
Yeah, or you simply purchased the wrong modules as part of the software.
Yeah.
Right. You maybe purchased the right software, but maybe you got oversold on something that you didn't really need as part of your package for your business. As you're evaluating things, keep in mind in an implementation, there's typically 3 levers that you can pull: quality, timeline, and budget. It's possible, but it's not common that you can pull all 3 levers. So keep in mind what's your most important, right? If budget's the most important, keep that in mind. You may have to sacrifice either timeline or quality. And on the flip side, if quality and a fast timeline is most important, it may cost you a little bit more. So just keep those things in mind. And as you go through, as you're scoping things out, think about what you really want, right? Do you want a Ferrari or do you want a Subaru Outback? Both are great cars, but they serve very different purposes and have very different results, right? If you want a Ferrari, buy the Ferrari. If you want an Outback, buy the Outback. Just don't expect the Outback to do 0 to 60 in 2.8. It's not going to happen, right? The beauty of an ERP implementation, though, is you can start with an Outback, something that's practical, something that you can take to the grocery store and get groceries. But over time, you can build that ERP up to get closer to that 2.8 seconds in 0 to 60 in 2.8 seconds. If you use that crawl, walk, run type of mentality, start with the core, start with something functional, and then add those automation pieces, you can have your ERP system running more like a Ferrari over time. All right, data. So, Sean, you can probably talk to this at more at the ground level better than I can, but you certainly want to avoid putting dirty data into your system. You want to clean on the front end, review the data, figure out what data is really needed, what isn't. Sean and I were just having a conversation this morning. working with a client, trying to understand how much historical data was needed to come in and what the best approach was to do that. Every situation is different. You have some situations where your legacy system is completely going away, and you need to bring in all of the data that is going to be needed for audit purposes, for client history, things like that. In other situations, maybe you still have access to that legacy system and don't need to bring in everything. So there's some strategy that goes into figuring out what data to bring in, when to bring it in, how much to bring in, and so on.
Yeah, and typically where we see success when it comes to an implementation and specifically around the data is when there's an understanding of that, right? That you're going into a new ERP, the opportunity to clean that data up before to start the foundational ERP settings all at the best optimal point. You have the opportunity here to clean that data, right? This is your opportunity. What we typically see when it comes to the dirty data side of things is that when the data does come in and it's not the best, it does require cleanup efforts after it's in the system, which can create some hiccups and some hurdles or maybe some misconceptions when we're going through training. People see data points that they weren't expecting or say, hey, that's old. That then become a little bit more of a challenge to try and get that user buy-in because it's not the data that they were expecting, right? So really use this opportunity in transitioning to a new ERP to clean the data up, get it to where you want it so that you guys start fresh, start where you want, and can kind of move forward from there.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, your ERP implementation is likely trying to accomplish two things. One, some operational efficiencies, and two, providing data that you can use to make quality business decisions that you can use to grow your business. And you cannot make those quality business decisions without good data. And so you've got to put good data in to get good data out. You can't take the data that was all messed up in your old system, throw it in the new ERP, and think it's magically going to just output everything that you need moving forward. So you can do the best job at configuration, at development, have some great integrations in place, but if the data isn't there to drive it, it really doesn't matter. You have to have good data, or you're not going to get the value out of the ERP that you had planned going in. So in terms of the strategy, we've kind of touched on this a little bit, but you definitely want to start small. Similar to what we were talking about with reporting, like start with out-of-the-box reporting and grow. Do the same with data in terms of a strategy. Start small, bring in no more than you really need. Certainly there are key data points that you're going to need to manage clients, to process orders, and so on. But don't bring in more than you really need. Garbage in is garbage out. Can't emphasize that enough. And then, Sean, I know when you work in implementations, you do a lot in terms of validation. And historically, this is an area that's been underemphasized. And I feel like in our implementations the last couple of years, we've done a much better job of getting the clients to own that validation. Maybe you can share a little bit about what we kind of go through or what you've seen clients go through.
Yeah, absolutely. Validating the data is going to be very, very important. One, it confirms that everything has gone in from your old system the way that it needed to, right? Specifically around financial impact. When you're bringing in historical data, you're bringing in that information that's rebuilding some of your financials to make sure that you guys have an operational standpoint to kind of go back and do some comparisons or stuff like that. Validating that data is very important. I know on our side, we typically go through a validation process and then we pass it back to our clients and say, okay, we've done our validation and know that the data you guys provided was loaded correctly. It matches, it ties out, but then we give an opportunity for the client to go in there. And I think this is where it's important so that you guys can go in, validate that the data looks the way you would expect it to, and that there's no anomalies. Because the last thing you want to do is get 2 or 3 years down the road and realize there's an Easter egg in there that didn't come over correctly or wasn't identified, and now it's throwing off reporting or throwing a specific data point out of sync. So validating it is very important, and tracking validation to make sure that everyone, both your implementation partner and you guys, are all in sync in regards to that data that's coming across.
Yeah, and certain data needs to be validated at at different times, right? If there's core financial data, we typically don't allow the client end users to be in the system until that core financial data is validated. It's way, way, way easier to clean up data before it's a problem. So if you can catch it before anybody has transacted against a client or a customer or an item or a vendor or what have you, it's so much easier to clean that up, as opposed to you get 2 weeks down the road and all of a sudden we've got all these transactions created in the system and we need to go back and clean up something because something was put in incorrectly, or we missed a data point, or whatever the case may be. It is a lot easier to clean it up on the front end as opposed to after that data has been used. Way more painful down the road.
Yeah, and the validation process is important in the sense that when you guys provide data to your implementation partner, they may have an understanding of your business, and they should, right? They should understand what you guys do and kind of how you guys operate, but they may not be able to validate that the data that's being provided to them is accurate. And that's where your guys' effort to go in there and do validations is important, because we can load data against the files provided, but then you guys can do a secondary validation to make sure that it looks the way you'd expect it to.
And then our last of the 5 kind of key areas of implementation or key success strategies is testing. And we see clients failing to test far too often, unfortunately. And this goes back to, we talked about at the very beginning, where those subject matter experts, they have day jobs, right? Everybody's busy, but you have to figure out a way to get those clients to, or get the users to test the various processes and such that need to be tested. So we don't want to hear the question, I needed to test that? Yes, the answer is yes. You need to test it.
Yeah, and there's a lot of value in having the team do testing just to validate out processes, and typically that's where you find some of those things that would otherwise kind of pop up in your face when you go through go live.
Yeah, I think we've got some other comments on testing, but first let's let Liz jump in and offer up a poll question.
Very good, thank you. So we'll go ahead and launch the 4th polling question. If you were to go through ERP implementation planning with an outside partner, would you prefer a fixed bid or a time and materials bid? This is a really insightful question, and imagine this probably gets a conversation going. There's some pros and cons on both. Does your team work with both types of projects, or do you have a preference?
Yeah, it's interesting. Historically, we've done more time and material, but we've had more and more conversations recently about doing more of a fixed bid type scenario. We've actually added in a 3rd option that feels like a fixed bid, but more of a subscription-based pricing model as well. So, and like you said, Liz, there's advantages and disadvantages with each one. On a fixed bid, you have to be really, really clear on scope of work, of what's included and what's not. Whereas with time and material, you have a little bit more flexibility in what's included and such, because you're just getting billed for the time that's actually being consumed.
Right. Well, that's really neat to know that you're innovating and considering different pricing models within your own company in a way to best support clients. Let's take a look and see what the results are here. So it looks like we have definitely a majority responded fixed bid, and still some folks who prefer time and materials, and it's great to know that you can accommodate both depending on the objectives and the preferences.
All right, so back to testing here. So what to test? Well, first of all, your implementation team, your partner, should help you figure out a testing plan, at least at a high level. Here are the different areas that we need to make sure are tested. Here are the 80% rule type of things. But you at your company, you know your business better than your partner does. So you need to be able to identify some of those edge cases, some of those areas that the partner may not think of because they're very specific to your business, and things that maybe only happen periodically as opposed to every single day on every single order. And I think in terms of how to go about testing, we embody two different types. And user acceptance testing, or UAT, is the bigger of the two. It's the more involved effort. It's where we're having those SMEs come in and get their hands dirty, so to speak, and really test out individual, very specific scenarios. And then prior to going live, we have our clients do what we refer to as a conference room pilot, where it's kind of that 80% rule again, where they need to test end to end. Just does everything work smoothly for the majority of orders? And it presents a little bit of a validation of sorts of we're ready to go live, understanding that there still may be some edge cases that nobody's thought of that can be incorporated later, or adjustments made, or what have you. But at least we've got the system in a good spot that we're going to be able to operate for most of our transactions and stuff.
Yeah, and through implementations that I've been a part of, where we see a lot of the success is when clients actually do the UAT and they do the conference room pilots, taking into consideration day jobs. We get that there's daily activities that need to take place because you are still operating while this implementation is going on. But most recently, we had a client that went through UAT and did a fantastic job, and their go live was so much smoother than some that have happened in the past, where they say that, hey, yeah, we've gone in there, and to a slide earlier, we were supposed to test that, and then you're finding things that go live that could have been addressed well in advance to make that go live process a little smoother. And through both of these processes, you can weed them out and start really dialing in the system before everyone gets in it and starts operating.
Yeah. All right, with just a few minutes left, we want to touch on just a few other maybe best practices, or maybe reemphasize some things that we've already touched on. So first, with an implementation strategy, we see three different routes that clients can go. Strategy one, relatively simple. You're running on QuickBooks. You really just need to replace QuickBooks and get onto a system that you can grow with. That type of implementation for us is typically in the 2 to 3 month range from project kickoff to go live date. Strategy number two is probably the more common, where maybe they're a more mid-market manufacturer, maybe have some e-commerce. There's a little bit more robustness to their environment. Maybe they're integrating with a couple of different outside softwares. They have a little bit more complex configuration that needs to be done in order for them to be operational on day one. And those are typically more in that 3 to 6 month range. Again, this is probably our most common. And then strategy three is we want the whole enchilada, right? We want everything that we talked about in strategy one, strategy two. But along with that, we want some custom processes. We want integrations. We want custom development. We want the easy buttons on various screens in the environment. We want things to go as quickly or as inclusively as possible, and have everything there so that we don't have to do additional phases to the implementation. We don't see this very often. We do run across those clients that do need to have that kind of strategy. But like I said before, if you're not getting done in that 6 month window or so, that's where things start to get a little bit more challenging. I had a client that purchased NetSuite it's a little over 3 years ago now. They never went live because they tried to incorporate so many custom processes. They started with what we thought was kind of more out of the box NetSuite with a little bit of custom flavor to it, and then shifted to, oh no, we really want you to just rebuild our current ERP, but in a more modern platform. And so the scope of the project became astronomical, and then it ended up shifting back closer to more natural NetSuite. And so all that to say, there's challenges, right, when you try to make things bigger than they need to be. So strategy three can be a challenge at times. Liz?
I was thinking about that and reflecting on one of my internships way back at a large company where they had customized their CRM so significantly that they were not able to implement the upgrade because there was too much customization. So definitely sounds like trying to do a timeline and use the out-of-the-box features as much as possible. Sounds like it's the recommended way to go.
I would say too, keep in mind your business is going to change and evolve over time. So in that example I gave of that client that took 3 years and never went live, their business changed some in that 3 years as well. So if you extend that timeline out too far, your requirements that you identified at the beginning may not be the same requirements that you have by the time you go live.
Right, definitely. So we are on our 5th polling question. When do you plan on replacing your technology? So interested to hear from all of you if that's something that you are targeting this year, next year. Maybe this is kind of a midterm plan for you 2 to 3 years out, or you're looking at it for more of the longer term. Let us know, interested to know if you have plans to replace your technology. We do only have a few minutes left, but if you have questions for Andy or Sean, feel free to write them into the questions box, and we will make sure that Andy and Sean receive your questions and can follow up with a response. So let me give you all about 5 more seconds here for this polling question. We'll close it down. We'll take a quick peek at the timeline. It's always fun to see how the plans are shaping up. If you responded at your manual, that could mean a couple things, but we're glad you're here. All right, back to you.
All right. So just to touch on a few best practices, I think we've touched on a lot of these throughout the last hour or so here, but you want to make sure you choose a partner that you can have a relationship with long after the sale. This is a long-term investment in your business. It's not meant to be transactional. You don't want it to be transactional. So you want to choose a partner that can become an extension of your business. And remember, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Automation is great, but you really want to put your effort in automation into where 80% of your business is. Those 20% edge cases can be treated as exceptions. There's ways to do exception reporting, lots of different ways to manage those edge cases as opposed to trying to automate your environment. Communication is key all the way through the implementation, from the time that you say you're going to implement all the way through go live and even after that. What's happening in the project? Keep everyone in the organization up to speed with what's going on in the project, how things are progressing. Generate excitement in the organization. And along the way, you want to meet regularly. We meet with our project team internally and with our clients once a week at a minimum. Crawl, walk, run. I cannot emphasize that enough. I know we've hit on it a couple of times. You want to do as little as possible to be operational on day one, and then add on to that as time goes on. And then Liz, we have our last poll question.
We are wrapping up right here with polling question number 6. That question is up on your screen. How much do you think your company spends annually on all of your software combined? So each year, estimated total software spend under 25K, between 25 to 50, 50 to 75, 75 to 100 or more. We do have a question from Blake about pricing options. So Blake, we'll make sure to get your question over to Andy and Sean, and I know that they'll be happy to follow up after the webinar today. Thank you so much for joining us and asking that question. All right, we are getting ready to close this polling question. Andy and Sean, thank you so much for just really great wisdom, those tips, the do's and the don'ts from clearly two professionals who have been there and worked on lots of ERP implementations. As we leave the polling question open for another few seconds, anything that you'd like to share as we close?
No, like you said, Liz, if there are additional questions, feel free to reach out. I'll throw our contact information here up on the screen here as people are dropping off, but certainly reach out to us. We'd be happy to answer any additional questions that you may have. And yeah, hopefully you found this beneficial for you and your company.
Absolutely, yes. So connect with goVirtualOffice. You can connect on all the social platforms. LinkedIn, of course, is a great place to start. Andy and Sean, I'll be connecting with you. And I did take some notes on LinkedIn as well. So there's kind of a nice little thread there to recap some of the highlights from today. So thank you, gentlemen. Certainly hope that our friends today will get in touch with you. Thank you, everyone, to the audience. It was great to have you here. Thanks for writing in. Thanks for your questions. And we'll look forward to having you back again with us very soon. Until then, take care.